Welcome to another edition of Influence Today with Chet, Tart, and Terry Lyles. Things that influence you, people around you, the environment, the things that you watch on TV, the books that you read, and things that people say really has an influence on us.
Mhm.
Good morning. Welcome to Influence Today. I'm Chet Tart, and Terry Lyles is with me. Terry, how you doing?
Good day, Chet. Great to be with you again, see you again, and looking forward to this communication piece that we're going to do.
Today we're going to talk about communications, and I think it's critically important. I have
Hmm.
about a handful of, besides my Vistage group, but a handful of coaching clients that I work with. I really want to call them trainers rather than clients, coaching, because we're training and going over different things. And one of the elements I have is a non-negotiable, and that is crystal clear communications. And I must tell you that most leaders, most managers do not understand crystal clear communications because to do that, I think you have to squash down time to
Hmm.
fully explain what you're talking about, have them understand what you heard because they hear it differently.
Right.
And I do think feedback's important. So you're out there also. What is your vision of crystal clear communications?
Yeah, this is going to be a lot to unpack in a few minutes, but I love the topic because I agree it's a huge problem in all of our lives, whether it's parenting, a marriage, running a business. Whatever you're doing, communication is key. I mean, when military ops go out into the field or aircraft, if they lose comms, what we communications,
Yeah.
they're flying blind. I mean, not physically blind, visually, but auditorily. And it's a huge disadvantage not to have clear, concise communication on where's my target? What am I trying to accomplish? Where do I send the missile? This is really important to the Air Force. So we do a lot of extensive training at the Air Force level, at NASA level on communications. Can you imagine Elon Musk landed that rocket the other day on that apparatus like a pencil or a straw going down and the thing grabbed it? How much communication did it take to send that rocket up and bring it back and put it into a dot? When you think about it that way, that's precise, excellent communication between human beings, technology, and the device you're trying to negotiate. And that's what it takes to really communicate clearly.
You bring up a good point. And maybe it's overused, but the word why are we doing this? I
Yep.
think helps out for the how. Because when
Hmm.
you explain why, and I don't want to be too, I want to be direct. You
Right.
explain why we're doing this. And I think that for some reason, if the leader is not around, you understand why you're doing it as you move forward, because most things are
Mhm.
not explained why. And then the how seems to fit in a lot better when you know why you're doing something. The intent of the
Yes.
leader that military uses. What's
Yes.
the intent?
No, I think it's that's spot on. I mean, I see this with marriages over decades of counseling with people and on the leadership side of training at the corporate level. The number one reason why people get divorced is lack of effective communication. Number two, money. Number three, sex. Sometimes those can invert, but number one, lack of communication. It's the first thing that breaks down, just like in the military. If your comms go down, you're guessing. I had a corporate coaching session over the past couple months now that's been ongoing with a leader in a company that was cut out of his own company because the person with the larger percent shut down communication with that person. So the next communication came as a legal document saying basically we're going to sue you to the minority owner. So the minority owner, guess what he had to do? He had to hire an attorney and countersue, all over the fact that you blacked someone out. All the guy had to do was pick the phone up. That's all he had to do and call the guy and go, look, I got a problem. He'd be like, oh, what problem do you have? I don't even know what you're talking about. So when communication breaks down, lawyers get involved, divorce attorneys get involved. All these meetings become weird and transference, and people are throwing things across tables. It's utter chaos when communication breaks down. What can ensue?
And communication is a very difficult. conversation to have with most people because most of the leaders and managers are, I call drivers, high D's.
Correct.
And if you look at their personality profile, it's okay, let's get this done, let's end this. The details are not there. And I
Hmm.
call it squashing the time. You have to squash the time a bit to explain. Here's the line I don't like to hear because I hear it quite often. I don't know if you hear it. Hey, we've hired adults. They need to be adults. And I don't want to babysit. And normally I say the reason you're babysitting is a couple things. One is they're not properly trained, so you have to babysit
Right.
them. The other thing is that there's no such thing as adults. I mean, that's a great term, but we're all kids at heart and we all do things.
Right.
And if a process is set up to help them win, they'll follow the process. But why are we following that process? I go back to the intent of why we're doing things. The other one is starting a project, there's very unclear expectations.
Right.
And also asking the person you're communicating, what did they hear? The reason being is that you and I are talking and we both have things in our brain, but what you're saying, I'm hearing differently than what you're telling me.
Hmm.
Do you have any tools for that to help that out?
Yeah, that in psychology we call that transference and countertransference. And it's transference is when I transfer something I believe, feel, or think onto you. It could happen in a conversation, it could happen in behavioral mechanism. Countertransference is when you countertransfer what you thought back to me, and now I take offense to it. And now we've got a full-on dispute.
Mm-hmm.
So this just because we say something doesn't mean someone else on the other end of that communication line gets what we're saying. And
I
to your
agree.
point
I agree
earlier,
with you.
you have to be crystal clear. And good communicators, and I think you're a good communicator. I think I'm a decent communicator. I mean, I do this for a living. You do too. People in the media, they help them by using text. Like they're reading prompters, unless you're people like us where we're getting asked questions and we're responding like we are now live in real time. That takes a different skill level and experience level that's taken us both years to learn how to do effectively, I think. So it's different when you're reading a prompter, and it's a lot like writing. Language, any language, I don't care what language it is. If you write, you can go back, reread, do punctuation, use spell check, have somebody else read it. And then when it's right and perfect, and you've checked your motive, you've rested for it, then you send it. Verbal communication is live, real time. There's no spell check. There's no time to speak. It already spoke. And
Right. You're right. You're right.
this is
Yep.
where it gets tricky because I don't have AI mechanisms around me, including spell check, right now talking to you, and nor do you with me. So it causes the brain to go through a different function of analysis and to start thinking through how simply do I communicate something that I get my points across. So when I go on the news, I'll have 2 to 3 points I try to make. Whatever else is said around it is it's wallpaper, it's clouds, it's what that's fine. But I've got 2 to 3 points I want to make. I've already made two of my three with you this morning. I go, I need that point made, I need that point made. So how do people interpret that? That's up to them. But if I don't know where I'm going, how are they going to know where I think I'm going?
Yeah, you're right. People are in the habit of quickly giving information. So the
Yeah.
habit has to be broken, and it takes some time to break it.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, when I'm coaching somebody, I'll say, we're going to go over one or two things and I'm going to leave. Well, don't we have an hour? I said, we have an hour, we have 2 hours, but there's only two elements I want to get to because if I overload you, you won't remember. And what I also noticed in the coaching is that most people don't take notes.
Right.
So I've asked them, I've given them journals. I said, I'd like you to get better. And here's how
Right.
the process will work. I want you to get a journal and I'll write you down one or two things you want to get better with. And every day on a scale of 1 to 5, I'd like you to rate, how did I do today? Whether you did it or not is not the issue. The fact that I've made you self-aware, which is the biggest gift you can give anybody,
Right.
how to make them self-aware. So I said, write down what you did. Did you break it? Did you do it? Did you not do it? And then at the end of the week, add it up and find out where you are in breaking that habit. because the only way to break a habit is to move slowly, differently, and replace it with something else. So that's how I look at it. I move very slowly. I'm very cautious, but at the same time, if I come back and you didn't do anything, I don't move forward
Right.
because my expectation is that you are going to learn how to crystal clear give expectations and have communication so that you get feedback. The other part of it is that how often do you have one-on-ones with your individuals so they know that you care about them?
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's so missing now in the world of technology and how we communicate. A text is communication, emails communication, a video, a podcast, it's all communication. How effective is it? We don't know. I mean, most times it probably is, but text messages are very difficult. My rule of thumb is if you're in a dispute or you're in a difficult situation, never send text because they're misunderstood. Emojis don't share what you think it shares. It's cute. I like that emoji. And they look at it and go like, what are you doing, man? You gaslight me? You know what I mean? So just because you like the emoji, somebody else may hate it because their ex sends it to them all the time. So it's all these things that are triggers, you know what I mean? And I think when it comes down to communication, if I say, Chet, I need you to go north on given road, I need you to go to the second light and turn right, and to the first next light and turn left, and I'm standing right there at the corner. So if you're driving on that road and you're looking for the second light to turn right, and you choose not to turn there, you might be able to get to me if you go past me and come back around and do a box. But I gave you the simplest way to get there. That's communication. Now people have to follow through to your point on the directions. Can you imagine telling GPS, you don't even know what you're doing. I'm not going that way. And GPS is smarter than we are. And it'll be like, I'm rerouting, and then it'll just keep running you until you get there because it's smarter than we are. It can see traffic that we can't see 50 miles down the road. You know what I'm saying? So it'll say, do you want to take an alternative route? All of that is communication. So the question is, we communicate in real time right now in this moment in the present. We communicate from what we learned from the past examples, and we communicate toward the future, which is mission statements and values. This is where we want to end up. But if you never get in your car, you're not going to get to the second light to turn left at the next first light to see me standing there. So there's processes involved in communication, and it starts with just being clear, simple, and even redundant if necessary to make sure that your message is being heard.
Well, being in the broadcast business, redundancy always works. I say it's what you say and how many times you say it, but delivery is also important because your
Yes,
delivery is incredibly important. So I say it's what you say and how many times you say it. And it's okay to repeat yourself because that's what marketing does. I don't
absolutely.
care what platform you're on today, but in the broadcast business, it was repeat, 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 repeat to get the message across. We found out it takes 7 times to hear it once, and
Yes.
it takes 24 times for someone to take action. There's a whole scientific thing about it. So imagine you communicating what you want to communicate once and expecting it to get done. But I do like your analogy of crystal clear communication as a GPS. That
Hmm.
is something I'm going to put down as, you're giving clear communications on your GPS. And also, if you notice with the GPS, it tells you 3 or 4 times ahead of time, next light, make a right. 200 feet, make a right. At this
Correct.
light, make a right. I mean, it really takes care of the why we're doing this, because you want to get on track. The other thing I was going to ask you about before we leave is let's talk about feedback. I think it's a negative thing, but we've changed some of the wording to debrief. I noticed that the Blue Angels, what they do is when there's mistakes, they debrief. And they told me that the debrief is longer than the training because with the training, you're trained and you're not really flying. And when you get in the air to fly, that's reality. They check your heartbeats, they check your
Right.
eyes, they check everything. And when you come down after that first flight, it's a big debriefing session that lasts almost twice as long as the training.
Sure.
What's your thought on that? And you do train race drivers and things like that. What do you do to debrief them?
the exact analogy you use, including Blue Angels and Air Force tactical teams, fighter pilots for the Air Force, even those at NASA. I mean, think of how much planning goes into just getting a rocket to launch. I mean, it takes hundreds of people and thousands upon thousands of hours of, combinations, mathematical equations. You can't get close. It's got to be exact. That's why math is exact. There's a lot of ways to get to a number. If you say I need to get to 10, you can get there a lot of ways by adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. There's a lot of ways to get to 10. But if you don't know you're trying to get to 10, you got a problem. So to your analogy, the debrief is longer. And so military personnel call that debrief actual feedback. So in the corporate world for years, I've noticed over the decades it's changed because they call it criticism. I'm going to give you some constructive criticism. There is no such thing. Criticism is negative. If you want to give me feedback, it's positive. I can be constructive with it, but don't tell me you're going to give me constructive criticism because my back's already up. My antenna's already up, and I already know
Yep.
you got
Yep.
something. I'm on the defense now. See, that's not a good place to be. Listen, can I give you feedback? So military personnel call it feedback because that's the recovery room after you go into surgery. So when you go to a surgery and you have a procedure done, the first place you go is into a recovery area. And what they're doing is they're checking your vitals. How did we do? Is there any bleeding? Is there drainage that necessarily needs to take place still? Are they on antibiotics? Are they breathing correctly? What's their heart rate? What's their breath rate? They're stepping you back down to reality after a traumatic event. So conversation is potentially a traumatic event because not all conversations are nice or good or simple. Sometimes they're complicated and they may
But
need
they're
some
needed.
recovery time.
Yeah, they're needed. Yes, absolutely.
So it's that recovery space. That's what to me the debrief is. It's a recovery, and then you can go out and celebrate. So I'll leave you with this. Fighter pilots use what they call a win cycle in the Air Force specifically, but Navy does the same. So you plan your mission, you brief your mission, you execute your mission, you debrief your mission, and you celebrate. It's a 5-tier process called win cycle, WIN. So plan, brief, execute, debrief, celebrate. And then you start another mission and you do it over and over. And if companies could just get, and leaders could just get that through their head, that just because you send a communication out, they got it, they didn't get it. You sent it once. I sent you an email this morning, Chet, and you didn't even get it. It went somewhere else. I have no idea where it went. So
Right.
you called
Right.
me, and then I called, and then I answer, and then I go, let me resend it. We resend it, and here we are. It's the simple things that just because you said it doesn't mean it was received. You got to check up to make sure it's received.
That's great. I have a slogan here I use all the time now. It's called I don't know what I said until you tell me what you heard.
Exactly. I love it. That's so simple,
That's
and
right.
it's so true. Because
And then
people will tell you something, you're like, what? That's what you
I did
thought I said, or
that's what
you
you
heard me
thought,
say?
right? Right.
But see, that's the counter transference because we all come from a space where we are in our heads at that moment. And I could be distracted by something else, or maybe my last phone call or Zoom or whatever was a little weird.
Exactly. I
And now
I mentioned right. I didn't hear you. Right.
I didn't, I'm foggy.
What I have here is also a debrief, a couple of questions that I use here. What was supposed to happen? What really happened?
Right.
Uh, what did we learn from that? And what information are we getting that we improve? But I also add one more. I said, what did we do great that we could repeat? Because that's a great one. And
Yeah.
by the way, the celebration, I use that all the time because I'll say that really anchors the behavior. If you think about every time somebody celebrated something,
Right.
that anchors the behavior. That's critically important.
Yes.
Hey, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I want to get deeper into our next couple of podcasts here on communications, and I want to talk about maybe questions we could use when we're doing one-on-ones with people and why one-on-ones are critically important. So that'll be our next
Okay.
influence today. So Terry, with the tools you have, how would somebody get in touch with you? They wanted to get some training on actually uh, crystal clear communications.
Well, all they have to do is communicate to my website, terrylyles.com, TerryLyles.com. It's over my head here. You can email me there and respond there, and I'll be glad to get back to you and answer whatever questions you have. We have resources, we have free downloads, PDF on handling stress and pressure, including communication. So a lot of free resources on terrylyles.com.
That's great. That's awesome. And also in your book, Becoming Invaluable,
Hmm.
you have many, many strategies on how to get better.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's
Yeah,
going to be very
chapters.
cool.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in Florida and you're in the area and you want to know more about Vistage, which is a peer group, and the
Hmm.
peer group was basically a board of directors that their one focus is on helping you grow. You add value to them and they add value to you.
Hmm.
And my peer group's been together now 3 years, and I got to tell you, they are best friends. They talk, hang, help financially, emotionally. They are tight. And we haven't had a turnover. We had people we asked to leave because they weren't adding value. But
Hmm.
other than that, if you're interested in Vistage, you want to know more, my email address is ctart@vistageflorida.com. And that's spelled Vistage, Florida.com. So, and by the way, if you like the show, we would like to hit the like button, also pass it on to other people. And you have a new site you're putting these podcasts on, a CEO site, correct, Terry?
Yes, it's
That
called
people could go to?
CEO Zones. So it's a very interesting place for CEOs to network. I think it's around 7,000+ CEOs globally that are a part of our network. And I have my own space there as well that we do communications. And we just started really launching over the past couple months, but we have a really concentrated focus in 25 to push that out. So ceozones.com is a really cool place. And we'll do another podcast on that alone and have the founder on who come up with this concept. Really cool concept and very elite people, just like with Vistage. When you put really elite people in a room and you start talking, look out. You never know what can come out of there. Really good stuff.
Life changes, yes. Hey,
Yes.
thanks a lot, Terry. I appreciate that. We will have another edition of Influence Today coming up shortly. This has been Terry Lyles and Chet Tart on Influence Today.